Welcome to episode 1 of Around the Tavern. Today, the guys will cover their introductions, their D&D starter guide, and Stephen will do his very first boss battle. And be sure you don't miss their characters that should have been. And without further ado...
Welcome to Around the Tavern with Chris and Stephen. I'm your host, Chris, with my co-host, Stephen.
Welcome to Around the Tavern. This is a fantasy podcast about all things Dungeons & Dragons, covering topics from the technical, the historical, and the various opinions within the D&D Multiverse. Chris and Stephen dive into the internet and a wealth of personal experience to bring you a big topic of the week in each episode, so grab one of our famous ales and pull up a chair. Chris, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Stephen. I'm kind of really excited. You know, this is our first episode, and we've been planning this for about a month and a half, getting everything ready, and it's kind of, my nerves are going right now, that's for sure. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves a little bit. You know, like I already said, my name is Chris, and I've been playing D&D for about 8 to 9 years, give or take. I started playing D&D. I was 14 working at a summer camp, and I was taught Dungeons and Dragons by a bunch of older guys who had worked at the camp for like 8 years. So they're about my age now when I was 14, and they taught me 3.5, and I learned on 3.5 and played that well until after high school. And just recently, in maybe the last two and a half years, I switched to 5th edition, which I'm really enjoying 5th edition. There's definitely a good difference between 3.5 to 5, but I enjoyed both of them. But those are kind of my only experience with Dungeons and Dragons, those two different editions.
So then, Chris, you've never run like a long campaign, or what sort of games do you run?
Now, I've only DM'd a couple of one-shots. I usually play. I am a player with a couple of one-shot experiences in the last year or so. I'm definitely getting more into dungeon mastering and, you know, expanding down that route. But for now, I've mostly just been a player with, I think, total of 3 one-shots under my belt, and that's all within the last year.
So... what do you think? What do
I think? Do I think? Not often, if I'm being honest.
So why haven't you run a game?
Why haven't I run a game? Well, if I'm being brutally honest, I really love telling a short, connected story. And that's what I can get away with doing a one-shot. I can combine all of these interesting little details, fun facts into a short story that I can get across, you know, within 3 to 4 hours. And I'm a little intimidated by the idea of running a longer campaign because there's a lot more to balance. And I know, as being a player, things don't go the way the dungeon master always plans. And to me, that is a little intimidating.
Mm-hmm. It is intimidating. Sorry, I'm coming. All right, so I'm Stephen, and I am Stephen, and I'm coming from a place where I have played Dungeons and Dragons for easily off and on for the past 20 years of my life. And I think,
old man.
So way back in the day, little old Stephen in high school, I was not allowed to play Dungeons and Dragons. It was, you know, Satan's game, still riding off of all that fear and hype. And so my very first role-playing experience was a one-shot that my friend Mike ran. We were playing in D20 Modern, which was sort of, you know, like... very different from Dungeons & Dragons. It's all about, you know, like, ooh, I'm a tech guy. Ooh, I'm a gun guy. Ooh, I'm a talking guy. And so from there, I was like, what the hell is this? Why haven't I been playing this? I like video games. Games, but I never get to create the video game actively as I'm playing it. So... I couldn't play Dungeons and Dragons. So what I would do is I would borrow my friend Mike. He had a bunch of 3.5 books, and I would comb through that player's handbook and that monster manual. I would just look at all the awesome illustrations, and that was one of my favorite things to do as a child, was just to like find a book with cool art and just flip from page to page looking at stuff. And
you see, I did the same thing, but that's because I can't read.
Oh, okay. Well, I would look at the pictures and then read some of the words. And from there, I mean, it really didn't blossom into anything until I would say my post-college years. I started running in like the height of 4th edition, which nobody liked.
Oh, yeah. The one I never heard
Some
of.
people don't even know it existed. But in the height of 4th edition, I started a campaign. It was one of my longest running campaigns, one of 3 campaigns that I've ever completed. And I mean, I liked 4th edition. The combats were really grindy and some of the systems were really lame, but overall it helped me to develop a lot of skills where I was really comfortable, you know, kind of like running games and seeing what kinds of things characters like to do. But then beyond that, sort of kind of kept, you know, running games. I didn't get to play very much. That's kind of a running theme for me, is I'm always running games. I'm never playing games. And so I really wanted to play. So I entered into sort of a second phase of my role-playing life, I guess you could say, where I went to Dragon Con in, I want to say, 2016. Which, if you would like to go, it is good, but be ready for just about a million people, all within like a 5-block radius.
A million people to fight.
And one thing that they had at Dragon Con was there's a separate system called Pathfinder, which was created by another company called Paizo, and they had an organized play, basically a hall, just like a giant room with people playing. They had this sort of like league of like, you know, scenarios that they published that people could run. And it was just like random people show up, play a random game, and it was fun. I spent easily half of my time at Dragon Con in that hall. Playing in games. Each game, I think it costs like $7 or something to sign up.
Wow.
So I was going game. I got up at like 7 a.m. I was awake until like 9. Our hotel was like, I don't know, I want to say 5 miles away. So I was walking both ways every day. And I think that was where my love for role playing was really like ignited. And
that's where your birth of your roleplay personality, if you would say. You spent $138, but you learned to love roleplay.
And so I was deep in Pathfinder Society for a long time. That was the really kind of the easiest way to find and create games. And you didn't have to have people who were willing to come every week, every other week, every month. So you could just start an event and people would sign up. Sometimes nobody would sign up at all, and that was disappointing. And I would drive, at the time I was living in North Alabama, but I would drive into Tennessee. There were a bunch of groups up there. I would drive down into Central Alabama. There was no limit to how far I would go to find these games. So
you drive to the other ends of the earth to play these games, boy.
So as things go, get married. You know, that kind of changes my that business. Get married, move to another state, kind of changes your schedule a bit. And everybody I knew personally was back in Alabama, so I would run online games, which right now we're using a program that my friend developed called Gate, and it's been...
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, that very well-known $5 little program. Things have been going well. Right now, I am on hiatus on one of my games that I'd really like to get back to, but then I actually started a game with Chris, you, and some of our coworkers and some of our family and friends.
Yeah. So that's kind of caught up to where our current history is. Me and Stephen worked together. We started working together the middle of last year or so. So we've known each other for just under 2 years. And Stephen wouldn't talk to me at first at work. And then I heard from somebody else that, oh, that Stephen guy, he plays Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, no way. Me too, bro. And I remember for like weeks, I just tried to get you to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. and you wouldn't talk back to me except for like one word. But over a slow progressional couple of months, I'd like to say we've become friends, Stephen.
You would like to say that, wouldn't you?
I would like to say it. I don't know how accurate would be.
No, we are friends.
But that's what kind of brought us to this idea. A couple months ago, me and Stephen were talking, and clearly Stephen has a lot more experience than me with Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games. And I like to find things out. I like to look for things. And every single day I was asking questions like, Stephen, what is this? Could I do that? Have you heard about this? And, led to the idea of what if we recorded these talking sessions and put it out there for other people to consume? And, Phyllis, she's our longtime listener, standing there in the kitchen having to hear us talk about this every single day. So that's what led to Around the Tavern with Chris and Steven. This is kind of our opportunity to put our ideas, thoughts, Steven's experience into a recorded format for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah. So, what should we talk about next?
Steven, the excellent response giver, he responds the same way at work. I can talk to him for 30 minutes straight, and then he would be like, yes.
Yes, Chris. Well put. Oh, my goodness. Please say it all again, just so that I can reaffirm.
That's the enthusiasm I want. So we're actually going to, our first topic today, before we get into our big episode topic of where to start with D&D, Stephen, the other day you brought up celebrities that play D&D, and I think this is kind of a cool point to point out for people who are either just now getting into Dungeons and Dragons or people who have played for a long time. Celebrities, whether we like it or not, play a big role in our society, so it's kind of cool to look at what they might do that would make them more of like a regular person. And you brought this idea up the other day, so I'm gonna let you kind of take the rope here. Do you know what celebrities do you know of that play Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, you can Google it if you want, but I think I am not so interested in, say, the actors or media personalities that put on a face that we love D&D so much. I think right now it's a little bit in fashion to say that you love playing role-playing games.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a little bit of a misconception. I mean, a lot of these actors are just crazy busy, and they definitely don't have time to put in any kind of real effort into playing like 4-hour sessions, with people. I mean, in LA, I'm sure like there's no way any two people's schedules line up. So I would say my number one celebrity, and this is a celebrity to me, is a man named Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Oh, okay. Okay, that one went right over my head.
He runs games for a show called Dimension 20, which is hosted on the Dropout.tv streaming service. Dropout.tv is basically the leftovers of what was College Humor. I don't know. Yeah, so College Humor, it was this like basically like an internet comedy troupe. They would do all these skits and stuff. It was not profitable, went bankrupt, and now Dropout.tv is basically what is left of that. And I would say Brennan Lee Mulligan is, I say he is the most proficient dungeon master I have ever witnessed recorded. And now obviously he has a lot of production budget and practice behind him, but that I would say is the level of dungeon mastering that I always try to aspire to. So if you don't know who Brennan Lee Mulligan is, which apparently I would assume most people don't, you can catch him if you're willing to drop $2 a month or whatever that cost is on Dropout.tv.
Ooh, yeah. Breaking the bank.
You will definitely get your money's worth of yucks and yums for your dollar. But also several of the seasons of his Dimension 20 series where they go through these different settings. In the first one, they're playing in this like fantasy high school. In the second one, they're playing in like a fantasy New York. In another one, they're playing in like in one of his like. So what they'll do is they'll have a main like cast that does their main seasons, but then they'll branch out and they'll get a bunch of guest stars to play in their kind of like side quest series. In one of them, they're playing like a pseudo Lord of the Rings where everybody's playing all the villain characters. And another one, they're playing where they host the McElroy brothers, who are playing as tiny little toys and creatures in like a Toy Story-esque world where they're trying to like save a child from impending danger.
Why would you do that?
Well, fortunately for the toys in this universe, they require the child's love to maintain their sentience. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, totally reasonable. My bad. Let me redact
so if
that
maintaining
statement.
a child's health is vital for your very survival, then yeah, let's use that as a reason to love children, I guess.
I get you. Solid
so
point,
Brennan Lee
Steven.
Mulligan, top of the list. Okay. Second on my list, I would say probably someone that people are much more familiar with is Matthew Mercer. He is the showrunner / DM for most of the seasons of Critical Role. If you want to look to someone who puts maximum amount of effort into world building and like story creation, like the levels that he builds into his story and the amount of effort he puts into building encounters, tracking what the NPCs are doing, filling out every single nook and cranny of every single town, I would say he is definitely someone you could look up to as far as.
Yeah, and I bet it's a lot easier getting paid to do that.
Also, well, I mean, he's a full-time voice actor, or I assume full-time.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's another good one. If you're looking for celebrities that I like, I would say probably my favorite is Stephen Colbert.
Oh, yeah, he's on the list. So I did some research outside of this episode to see what celebrities played, and he is first on the list. Thank you, Wikipedia page.
And from what I know about him, he is like a huge Lord of the Rings nerd, which anybody who's interested in Dungeons and Dragons, if you like Lord of the Rings, I bet you're going to like Dungeons and Dragons.
I mean, I don't see the connection there.
Oh no, the wizards are all angels or something. It's nothing like.
It's not the same.
So yeah, Stephen Colbert. You can watch. He ran a one shot with Matthew Mercer. It was a little kind of like campy, playing it up for the audience and stuff, but it was really fun.
Yeah.
Stephen has some really great energy, and I love his name.
Oh, yeah, that's not biased, Steven. So, yeah, like I pointed out, I did a little bit of research, and Stephen Colbert was, top of the list. But for me personally, I was surprised by a couple of these celebrities that either played D&D in the past or they still play. My top three were Vin Diesel. That surprised me. We've got Matthew Lillard. Shaggy. I didn't know Shaggy, one of my childhood heroes, played Dungeons and Dragons.
Actor, Matthew Lillard.
Okay, hear me out. And then the late great Robin Williams, which he was known to be a huge gaming nerd, and when I learned that he played D&D, he was one of my role models growing up. I love most of the movies Robin Williams starred in, and a lot of the other ones he did. So it was kind of really neat to see that somebody I looked up to most of my childhood also played one of the same games that I currently play now. Like I said, that's just so cool to me. And in doing more research, when he died, the D&D community at the time, especially on Reddit, really took that, deep to heart, that he played Dungeons and Dragons. And, Robin Williams was known to go to local game shops in different towns, small towns, and it kind of made him even more relatable, or more so than he already was. And the community made him a deity in 3.5, this homebrewed deity. He's actually the god of good, madness, and trickery. And, there was a lot of support behind that. And I thought it was so cool. just a really fun thing to find there. And I know you were a little judgy there when I said Matthew Lillard playing Shaggy and him playing D&D. But something else I found really cool. He actually started, Matthew Lillard, he started a company with his lifelong D&D group called Beetle and Grimm's. I didn't know about this until the other day. And they do a lot of official expansions. They've got cool dice sets, and Robin Williams and Matthew Lillard were a huge part of my childhood. I'm 22, about to turn 23, and you're a little older than me, but I'm sure you've seen the films that they were in. But personally, it was just so cool seeing that they also played Dungeons and Dragons. And that was kind of the rabbit hole that looking into celebrities that play this game and role play and other, tabletop games kind of led me down.
Yeah. I think most people would be surprised. And like, if you're looking to start a game and you don't know who to talk to, like, I don't know anybody that plays Dungeons and Dragons, you probably do. Because me and Chris, we didn't know that we played Dungeons and Dragons until just like happenstance it came up. And
it got mentioned at work, and then I brought it up, and then I brought it up, and then I brought it up for like 3 months before Steven would talk to me.
And since then, we've even found other people at our workplace that play.
Yeah, I think there's 5 other people just in our workplace, and our workplace isn't even that big, that also play Dungeons and Dragons. Which I'm glad you brought that up, because that kind of leads into our big topic today, which is going to be Around the Tavern, a D&D starter guide, kind of our own personal tips, suggestions to how to get into the game, and different things I've used over the years. And Steven, you've been playing a lot longer than me, so I'm sure back in your day all you guys had were the books, but we have the internet now, so that's a cool resource. I use
your internet.
Boom, roasted, Steven. I'm joking. So, Steven, let me just go ahead and ask you, for when it comes to books and materials, what do you use, or how would you recommend somebody either who's getting into Dungeons and Dragons or somebody who's even played for a while to get these resources?
Well, it would be very easy for me to just say, go buy the starter box. If you've never played Dungeons and Dragons at all, and you're not looking to invest an incredible amount of capital resources, go buy the D&D starter set. It'll give everything that you and 4 players need to play. Gosh, I mean, it's called the starter set, but you could easily make an introductory campaign out of it. Like, you could play for months and months if you wanted to.
And I picked one of those up from Target for like $7, I think, during the holiday season last year. I bought it solely for the dice in the box, but I bought the whole adventure.
It is easily the most affordable way to get started. Now, if you're like, Steven, I don't need that baby shit, or sorry, stuff. I don't need that baby stuff. Yeah. Edit that out. I need something bigger than that. Well, then you need all you need is the core 3 books. You need the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is going to give you, presumably the engineer of this game, a great resources for how you should think about the world, how you should run things. It's going to give you all sorts of tables if you need tables that tell you what sorts of things you encounter where, or how big should this Thorpe ship be, how many lumberjacks should live there. And then you're going to need the Player's Handbook, which is probably the most important book, which is going to detail all of the classes, all of the races, all of the spells, and really tells you how to play the game for the players, which are people you're going to have to rang-jangle around in the world you're playing in. And then you're going to need the Monster Manual, although the Monster Manual, I would say, is not as important. If you,
but it is my favorite. It is my favorite to look at all those cool monsters.
You can Google any monster in the Monster Manual, and you'll pull up the D&D Beyond entry for that monster and half the time I'm running games, I don't want to flip and leaf through the monster manual for, a kobold. And then on this page, I have to keep track of the bandit captain. On this page, I got a basilisk. So usually it's going to be easier for you to, if you have access to some sort of tablet or laptop device, to just have a bunch of browser tabs open with whatever creatures you're running, and that should be a lot easier. So those three, I'd say, would be your go-to as far as materials to buy. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And one statement on the monster manual, having the multiple tabs. I made the mistake when I first got my monster manual. I was running a Halloween themed one shot last year, and I went through and I used one of those little sticky tabs, and I marked every page that I wanted. And then I shut the book, and I didn't touch it for about 2 months. And now those sticky tabs, they live there because I pulled one off and it ripped the page, and I was so sad. I was like, no. So don't make that mistake. Do not use sticky tabs. Just kind of remember the page number if you have to. But Stephen made a great point. If you need to look up a monster or anything along those lines, just Google it. Google and the internet will be your best friend. And there's other things that I use, especially when it comes to character creation and things that would necessarily replace the player's handbook. I use DnD 5e wiki, and it has basically everything on there and some of the other content that's out there for Dungeons and Dragons. And the official resource, you can also use D&D Beyond, which is another internet browser that kind of gives you a lot of information that you would find in the books. And outside of just buying the books, you can also just say, hey, Steven, can I borrow that player handbook that you have? And Steven will give you that player handbook, and then you'll hold on to it for about 9.5 months and leave it in your trunk. And I'm not speaking from personal experience.
Chris, sorry, I think what you meant to say was you would ask very kindly for that book, and then you would use it like a precious resource. Every second you had it in your possession, you would be combing over its pages, learning everything you possibly could.
Absolutely. Do not ask to borrow books and leave them in the trunk of your car for a couple of months and then still not give them back. But yeah, that's kind of, I would say along the same things you did. You can also check thrift stores. I've seen player handbooks for $20 at a thrift store, and I think new they run about 50. So that's not a bad price difference there if you're looking to buy it and have a physical copy, because there's benefits of both. I like having the physical copy too, so I can look at the pictures and kind of flip through the pages like a little picture book for me. One
trick you can try, if any of your friends who you're playing with or whatever have one of the original printings of the 5th edition Player's Handbook, a lot of the times the binding on those were pretty terrible and they'd start to fall apart after a couple of years of use. You can email Wizards and say, hey, my book's falling apart, and they'll send you a brand new copy. pass off that old copy to whoever you want.
So what Steven is saying is you pull together with your friends, buy a copy of the book, beat the snot out of it, and keep doing that till you have enough books for everybody.
I am not suggesting that you defraud Wizards of any revenue.
Okay, and so, part of the starter guide here, we also want to talk about, finding a party, finding friends to play D&D with, or, even finding a DM can be hard sometimes if you're not ready to take into that role of being dungeon master. So if you just want to play, Stephen, what would maybe a few of your tips would be to, find friends? Stephen, how do I find friends?
Meeting and influencing people indeed. I think, and this is going to be a hot take, if you want to play D&D, you need to be the dungeon master. Yeah, if you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, you got to run the game. There's a huge deficit in the number of people willing to run games, to put in the effort. And if you want to play so bad that you're willing to talk to strangers, God, that's something I would never do. If you want to talk to strangers,
I got it.
Then you need to learn the rules. I would say go and find some live play shows. Dimension 20, it's not going to teach you much rules wise, but it's going to show you how a game kind of functions. Now those games run on, a high level of production with people who know each other very well. You might just be playing with some people at a card shop in town that you've never met before.
Well, that brings up a good point right there, Stephen. Go to your local card shops and just ask the person working behind the desk, say, hey, do you guys run Dungeons and Dragons games here? Or something along those lines.
And I think many people's first instinct in this internet digital age, their first instinct might be to go to like a meetup site or find something like, I know there are games you can find on Roll20 or on other websites. Mm-hmm. I would, if this is your first Dungeons & Dragons experience, don't do that. There are all sorts of turbo nerds out there that are just going to ruin the taste of Dungeons & Dragons for you with their half-elf fighter wizard that has a 27 AC, and they're just so cool because they fireball all the creatures and you don't get to play now.
Burn it to the
I would
ground.
go to a game store and I would meet people because you're going to know whether or not you want to sit down for 4 hours at a time with somebody after you've met them. Whereas you won't necessarily be afforded that luxury if you're playing on some sort of digital platform.
Okay, so that's Steven's recommendation. Here's mine. So what's worked best for me over the years, like I said, I got into D&D because I worked at a summer camp and we were all trapped there together. And it was like, hey, we've been working here at this summer camp for 7 years. We play Dungeons and Dragons. You want to join us? And I was like, yeah, okay. So that kind of piqued my interest there because I was held captive at a summer camp. And so it was kind of by association that I got into Dungeons and Dragons. But how currently I found groups and the people that I play with now, one, you guys at work. We started talking about it and now we play together. Two, on campus where I go to college, there's an entire Discord dedicated to just people at the college who play Dungeons and Dragons, which is an awesome resource to find people starting new games, finding people who play the same games as you. And that's one thing we used. And then, well, actually, that's kind of the main resource was the college campus. Hannah put up flyers all over the place, and it was like, hey, come meet in this room if you want to play Dungeons and Dragons. And then I showed up in a room with about 14 other random people, and they've become some of the best friends that I have. And if you guys are watching this, one, thank you guys for, listening to this. It's a podcast.
Two, how
thank
can you
for
see
listening.
us? Where are the cameras?
Two, how are you watching this? No, seriously, thank you guys for listening to this, and I love you guys in the D&D group. It's just really Dungeons and Dragons is a great way to build friendships, and let's get real wholesome for a minute, Stephen. We're building friendships, and we started as a group of random strangers going, what is this game? And we played for about 10 months consistently. And they're some of the best friends that I have. So that's my personal tips for, looking for people who also play and maybe finding a party or starting a campaign is look what's currently in your life. Like if you go to college, reach out to things on campus, or if you go to work full time, ask around at work maybe, or do Steven's suggestion, go to the game shop, because if they're going to the game shop, they're already going to be playing one of the games there, likely to be Dungeons and Dragons. So, that kind of covers the real broad topics about getting into the game. Steven, do you have any kind of, tips or things you've learned playing for all the years that you have? Or maybe hey, don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, if you don't know how to make your character, just ask. Or anything kind of like something along those lines.
Tips about making a character, first of all, is I would not go crawling through the internet seeing like, oh, what's the best way to build a melee focused fighter? Like, do whatever you want. Put your ability scores wherever you want. Pick whatever skills you want. Pick whatever spells you want. Do whatever you need to build a character that will be fun for you to play and for other people to interact with. That is something that I think some people forget, is that Yeah, it might be fun to play the character that sets literally everything on fire, but I bet you it's not fun to be a player seeing another person destroy the entire game for everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, playing like that can be fun sometimes, but that's definitely not going to be the way to play all the time.
So tips for how to dungeon master. This is gonna sound just like, I don't know, just very contrived, but you gotta practice. And the best way to practice is to do. So that's why I say, if you want to play a game, well, first of all, if you start dungeon mastering, you're never going to get to play. You're always going to dungeon master. But
no, that's not true. Do not listen to Steven. It's like 90% true, but it's not 100% true.
But yeah, you got to play. I threw myself into the deep end as after I started playing. I played for this entire weekend at Dragon Con. I started running games for Pathfinder Society as often as I possibly could. And I would say that was the crucible that forged me into the person that is more than just as a DM, the person that I am today.
Ooh, okay. Let's talk about who you are today, Steven. Nobody you want to know. Yeah, no, Steven's right in that sense. Kind of the only way to get into the game to learn things is to just start playing, like Google things, look up things.
And oh my gosh. No, sorry.
So
I have to read the rule books, please.
Okay.
If nothing else, read the gameplay sections of the player's handbook and understand that you have an action and a bonus action and a movement and a reaction.
Okay, Steven, I still play with people who've played for years, and they don't know that stuff. It's and you're playing there and you're sitting there. The DM's like, "All right, little Bobby, it's your turn. What are you doing?" And then little Bobby goes, "I don't know. What can I do?" And then the DM has to look at little Bobby and be like, "I don't know, Bobby. What does your sheet say?" So yeah, Steven makes a very good point there. Like, even if you don't want to read the rule books, go on YouTube and type in what are combat turns in Dungeons and Dragons? What are the basics to Dungeons and Dragons? And watch something that kind of really explains, like, bonus actions, your main actions, how can you move, what can your weapons do, how do spell slots work, and that kind of vibe, you know. Steven brings up a good point there.
Especially if you follow my advice, the master's advice, to start a game and run the game, please learn some of the rules. I mean, I'm probably coming at, talking down from my high tower. I'm a bit of a rules nerd, but if you can learn the rules well enough that you know the rules better than most of your players, I think that would be a good place to start from.
Oh yeah. So kind of talking about, we mentioned it a little bit a couple minutes ago, but character creation, that's one of my favorite things to do, Steven. You know it. Like, I'll just be talking to you at work and be like, "Hey, Steven, what about this idea? What about this character idea?" It's one of my favorite things to do, is just build characters. And I've got a whole folder here on my computer with probably 12 different characters that I've made but never got to play. And so for my personal process for creating characters and kind of what I do, I don't know if I'd recommend it, but I do it. When it comes to making a character for a new session, whoever's DMing, I go, what's the world? What are there any restrictions? What have you made? And I'll build off of that. And then if they go, "Oh, okay, you're going to be in a pirate heavy themed sea adventure," I will theme my character on a sea adventure. And then I'll go, "Okay, what kind of cool pirate could I make? Ooh, bunny pirate, like a bunny man pirate. That would be kind of cool." So then I would go with the rabbit folk. Okay, what do I want this bunny pirate to do, And then that's how I build my characters, as I start with the ideas and the concepts and what would I think would be cool to be in this kind of environment. And then I go through the technical process of actually building that character.
Mm-hmm. So you always start from the setting, and then you decide, well, all right, what kind of, do I want to play some like kind of spellcaster? Do I want to play some sort of axe swinging lord man? And then
yeah. And one thing for me that I try to balance the party, but that's just because I played a lot, so I don't really mind playing other roles. If I already know we're going to have like 4 heavy hitters and no spellcasters, yeah, I'll jump in as the spellcaster. And we talked about this too. You don't necessarily try to balance the party or care too much about the party being balanced in the way that there's multiple classes. That's just something I like to do.
I disagree. And here's why. Here's why I disagree.
Chris is wrong.
Nobody should force themselves. One thing that I dislike is the person who plays the cleric is forced to always cast healing spells because all their players know they have a cleric and the cleric can cast healing spells, so they don't have to worry about their own safety. The cleric will out heal the DPS of the enemy creatures. One thing I would say is don't play something you don't want to play.
Oh yeah, no, I do that willingly. I willingly take on the role that nobody else wants to do.
From all of my experience playing in Pathfinder Society, I mean, you show up to a table, there is no telling what sort of characters you will be playing with. I played in probably one of my most memorable games ever. It was a table with all bards, 100% bard table. And Pathfinder, you could do a very annoying thing to all of the NPCs where one person would try to start an entrancing performance. Oh shit! Oh shoot! I didn't get all of them. All right, bard number 2, you try to start an entrancing performance. You might think like, oh no, we don't have a healer. That's okay. You don't have to have, one fighter, one wizard, one rogue, one cleric. It's like you can make a party. Like right now in the game that me and Chris are playing that I'm running, we have discovered very quickly that, oh wait, every single character wants to run up to the monster and either punch it or hit it with something.
Oh, yeah, I learned my lesson very quick with that one. Very quick. I ran in and got the snot beat out of me. It was either our first or second encounter, and I ran in like, hey, come here, you big old ugly monster. And then I got the snot beat out of me, and I cried in the corner of a cave.
So that is my 2 cents on how your philosophy.
Okay.
As far as my philosophy for character creation goes, like I said, I kind of start from a concept, and I have a lot of history playing games like Dark Souls and Legend of Zelda. So it's a lot of strong profiles, like I have in my mind like these characters who are like in the middle of these like epic like cutscenes. So just start from there. If it's some guy whose whole family was murdered by orcs and now he's out for revenge, he took up his father's sword. That's a really great place to start for me.
And trauma. If you're making a Dungeons and Dragons character, give them the most horrible trauma you could think of. Your parents were murdered by an asteroid that came flying into the earth in the middle of the night, and you were the only survivor, only to be shunned by the village. Yeah, that's the kind of backstory you need.
Absolutely. And if you're the dungeon master, give your players those backstories by killing their whole family with an asteroid.
Yeah. Just go ahead and steal that asteroid idea. I wish that would have happened to me personally. No, I'm joking. So yeah, these were this was our starter guide. This is the official Around the Tavern D&D starter guide. It's our good suggestions, our opinions. I'm going to use the word good loosely there. Good enough. So let's go on and jump to what's going to be an every episode topic. It's going to be a question from Reddit. I've scoured Reddit for the last month and a half looking for content, questions, cool things, controversial things, just a bunch of random Reddit D&D related topics. And so every episode I'm going to ask Steven a question I found on Reddit, and I want him to answer it as he would if he was the dungeon master for the game, answer it from his own personal opinions. Just give us the Steven certified answer.
I'm ready.
Are you ready, Steven?
No, absolutely.
Okay, well, this is actually, for our first episode, I've got a very lighthearted question today. It's, if a dice flies off the table, Do you have the player reroll, or do you take it as it lands, and why?
No, reroll it. If you can't roll a dice on a flat surface in front of you without it flying several feet away from your hand, then you don't deserve whatever. Because let me describe a scenario. So you roll a dice,
Okay.
it goes off the table. It's on the floor. It's a 20. I rolled a 20. Like, if that had been a 1, no, you wouldn't have been like, oh, yeah, it's a 1. No.
You wouldn't have taken
on
it.
the table, flat surface.
Yeah.
Some people can't even manage it in a dice box. It's actually...
Yeah, I use a dice tray, and about 40% of the time my dice will end up on the floor.
If you give it a little bit of effort, it's quite easy to roll within a little 5 by 5 inch square in front of you. No boxes required. You can just a little quick roll, and it should be real easy to see the number when it's on the table in front of you.
Now you have it here, folks. That's Steven's official verdict. If the dice flies off the table, it does not count. And like I said, this was definitely one of the more lighthearted questions I found on Reddit, and they will probably get progressionally more intense or complex as the series goes on. And that's definitely a little segment I'm looking forward to every single episode.
Were there any other responses on that thread?
Oh, no. It was about 50, and it was probably around 50-50. About 50 people, 50 Steven. 50 people, individual people. No, it was 50-50. Some people were like, yeah, if it flies on the floor, we're going to count it. Some people were like, no, if it goes off the table, that's bad.
Yeah, that is
like
bad.
You, Steven. And this Reddit questions will be an every episode topic, which kind of leads us to something I want to bring up right now. Around the Tavern with Chris and Steven will feature a post-show interview contest where 6 different people have been interviewed about their character that should have been. A Dungeons & Dragons themed contest where contestants bring and introduce a character they made but never got to play. The winner is going to be picked in the final episode by me and Steven, and they'll win the first ever Around the Tavern Award, which will be a physical award. And if you win, I'll give it to you, or I'll send it to you. And the contestants, I've already done all the interviews, and there'll be kind of like an end segment after we wrap up the main show at the end of every episode. So a total of 6 different contestants. And I'm really excited about this. And I've reached out to some cool people, some people on the internet, people we know. And it's going to be a really fun interview experience. And I'm looking forward to it. You all should look forward to it. Steven, you're going to look forward to it because I say so.
If you insist.
Okay. And kind of to kick off the topic of characters that should have been, me and Steven are going to give a quick rundown of characters we made, but we never got to play, to kind of give the vibe of where we're going for the contest. Steven, I want you to go first. I want you to tell me about a character you've made but never got to play.
Well, as I said before, once you start dungeon mastering, you will always be dungeon mastering. So I have a long laundry list of characters that I've wanted to play. I've had their face in my mind for how many years, but I've never gotten to play.
So sad.
So, we're talking about getting started. We're talking about kind of like where our Dungeons & Dragons origins. So going back to me being a wee lad, looking at my borrowed 3.5 player's handbook, I think the image that resonates most in my mind is that of the iconic druid. I don't know that character's name, but it is this stunning moon elf woman. She has this like intricately layered leather armor. Ooh. She has this half skull. It must be like a dragon skull. It's huge, like as a shield with all sorts of antlers tied to it. She has antlers in her hair. She has this wolf companion. Just a very striking image, especially considering how kind of generic a lot of the other iconic characters were. So I have a certain fondness for druids and elves, even though I'm a very boring person. I play a lot of humans, although recently I've been playing more elves, I guess. So going back to this character that I've never gotten to play, his name is Silveril Moonsorrow. Just the most edgy elven name you could think of.
Oh yeah, but I dig it.
His name is Jasper Dagger Shadow. And he is from a village off in the woods, as elves are to do, build little elven villages.
Yeah.
And this village is special in that it is dedicated to the worship of this great sylvan creature, a god of ravens and darkness named Tethra. And sort of borrowing from other Dungeons and Dragons style stories that I've consumed into my mind. This village, while they are devoted and devoted to this sort of patron creature, at the same time they're somewhat resentful because this god Tethra demands sacrifices from them, as any good god should. And
oh yeah, and any reasonable god demands a good sacrifice.
I mean, I don't know what you're expecting. If you want those spell slots, you got to give something up. If it's either a goat or a hand, you gotta do something for those spells.
It's a goat hand.
So his dark origin story is eventually this town, they get fed up and they try to hatch a plot they're going to betray their goddess and they're going to murder her and they're going to finally get out of her gross raveny clutches. The plan goes awry though. Tethra, her spies are everywhere. She murders their offering, who was meant to be the town's assassin, and then she turns her wrath on the town and kills everybody. And Silveril is left bleeding to death, lying in the bloodstained grass. When Tethra approaches him, a beautiful but horrifying woman in a dark bloodstained gown, and she
That's how
she
I like
reaches
him.
down and she rakes her taloned claw across his chest. And then he awakens months later, covered in snow, now forever bound to this dark entity's service. And he's a druid that, sure does love turn into Raven. In the game that, in the one game that I was going to potentially play this character in, me and the Dungeon Master had worked out that in his wild shape form, he would actually wild shape into a swarm of ravens. That is something that I would encourage you. If you can work out something cool to do with your character, with your Dungeon Master, as long as you're not trying to, cheat the game somehow and give yourself infinite gold, I'm sure your game master would be more than happy to accommodate. So that is my character, Silveril Moonsorrow, druid bound to the service of Tethra the Raven Queen.
Okay, I definitely dig it. Yeah, I see the inspiration you had there. I love the trauma and the backstory there, Stephen. It's really cool. And, that's kind of one thing that comes with the territory of playing Dungeons and Dragons. The longer you play, the more characters you're going to make that you'll probably never get to play. And so for me today, I've got one of my favorites, and I've actually done a video about this character on my TikTok because he's just one of my favorite characters I've made, but I've never had the right opportunity to play him. His name is Cecil Jenkins. He's an 80-year-old paladin, and he's not been a paladin his entire 80-year life, Stephen. He originally spent 79 years as a fisherman. He had a lovely, beautiful wife. Her name was Magnolia Jenkins, which she would go by Maggie, actually. They lived together on their lighthouse. He was a, genuine kind of guy, heartfelt fisherman. They never had kids, but they loved everything about their life until one day. Dun, dun, dun. It's a dark, stormy night near the lighthouse. And this angry sea spirit is going to come out of the water and murder Cecil's lovely wife. And this distraught old man is going to lose everything he's ever cared about in one moment. And absolutely devastated by the loss of his wife, this is going to awaken something in Cecil. It's going to convince him to go to the local town. He's going to ask for help, but no one's going to want to fight this angry sea spirit. So Cecil starts his training. He becomes a paladin. He's going to avenge his wife's death. And, since I've never actually played Cecil, I've not had a chance to, live out the rest of his story. But I'd imagine it goes something along the lines of, Cecil becomes this awesome paladin. He goes on these heartfelt adventures with a group. He tells stories about his life. He kind of inspires people that even in, like late in life, you can still find love and care for things. And Cecil's going to acquire the power he needs to fight this angry sea spirit and avenge the murder of his wife. And after killing the sea spirit, he's going to return to what's left of his lighthouse, and he's just going to lay down next to his wife's grave and pass on to.
He's not going to go back to fishing?
No, he's done it.
He's got
lost
79
his wife,
levels
Steven.
into the fishing tree. He's got one more level to go to get the capstone. He gets master
Steven.
fishing proficiency at level 80.
Okay, scratch that. He doesn't have a nice moment and, go to be with his wife. He's going to cast his reel in the water and focus on what really matters.
See, he didn't really care about his wife. All he wanted to do was fish, and then this spirit came and upended his life, turned his life flip-flop upside down, and then he had to go on a pesky quest to avenge his dead wife.
Yeah, you know what? Let's just, scratch everything I said, Steven. You figured it out.
It.
That's the actual story of Cecil Jenkins, the fisherman. Nothing else matters. And, it's kind of these cool stories that you think of when making characters that gave me the idea to interview other people. And, I'm excited to really hear the stories that people think of when they're making these characters. And a lot of, time and effort and energy and thought goes into making stories. And this is really a cool opportunity for people to show their awesome ideas to the rest of the world being everyone listening to this podcast. But you get what I'm saying.
All 12 of them.
All 12 of our listeners, thank you very much. But like I said, it'll be so fun to listen and to pick our favorite Steven. And we're going to announce the winner in the very last episode 8. There will be 8 episodes in season 1 of Around the Tavern with Chris and Steven. And it's, I'm excited. If I haven't clearly already said the word excited about 48 times in the last 10 minutes.
I am also excited. My name is Steven.
That's the most we're going to get out of Steven. That's all he knows how to say. And that's going to kind of start to wrap up our episode today, but we've got one more category. It's going to be an every episode topic, and this is your time to shine, Steven. This is your category. It's Steven's boss battle. So this is...
Let me at him. I'm so ready. I'll interrupt you over and over again. I don't care how many times.
Steven's boss battle will be an every episode topic where Steven introduces a monster or boss from anywhere in the D&D universe and tells how he will use it as a boss battle. Steven, are you ready for your very first Steven's boss battle?
Let me center myself.
Okay, everyone.
Yeah, let's
moment of silence for Steven.
All right, so Steven's very first boss battle. So Chris, in the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons, I don't want to railroad you. I don't want to put you on like this is the monster you have to face. So I'm going to give you a choice.
Okay.
And I would say it is very easy as a dungeon master to fall into one of these two camps when you're throwing your first, threat at your players, and that. There's two monstrous races that will pester every first level group, and those are goblins and kobolds. So, Christopher, you get to decide.
Goblins and kobolds.
Who do you want to be the boss battle? Goblins or kobolds?
Give me those goblins, okay? I'm ready.
Ooh, those goblins.
Give me those gobbos.
Right. So, Christopher,
yes.
What do you know about goblins?
What do I know about goblins? They sound like, and they're short and they're green most of the time, and they like to pillage and attack and steal shiny things. That is my current goblin knowledge. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So you'd say mischievous and murderous are definitely two aspects that you closely associate with goblin behavior.
They're like the chihuahuas of monsters.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I haven't said the word Pathfinder enough, I'm going to say it again. Pathfinder.
We are a D&D podcast.
But in the Inner Sea World Guide, which is the campaign setting for all of the Pathfinder stuff, the goblins in that setting are probably, I would say, in my mind, the quintessential goblins. That is, if you've ever seen the movie Gremlins, they are exactly like the gremlins from the movie Gremlins, in that they're these mischievous little critters that, they're insatiable. They will do whatever they want for pleasure or satisfaction. And they will get into all sorts of, mischief and mayhem at the expense of, anybody who's not them.
So a chihuahua.
Yes. So a chihuahua that likes to pick up knives and stab non-chihuahuas.
Okay, I get it. I'm following.
So as far as a boss battle goes, I would say one of the biggest pitfalls a new dungeon master can fall into is to just, run goblins as the most generic way possible. And usually in all the published adventures and stuff, goblins, you got a bunch of, goblins, whatever. They're having a laugh. They're doing whatever. And then there's there's a hobgoblin or there's a bugbear that's bullying him around and he's the real boss. But if you want to run a goblin as a boss, imagine, all right, come with me on an imagination journey.
Okay,
Chris.
I'm imaginating. My brain is working on overdrive.
So goblins, they are not architects. They are not engineers. They have no great cities.
Okay.
So you'll often find them in the ruins of, old fortifications or villages. So imagine, if you will, a tribe of goblins that have taken up residence in this dilapidated castle.
Yeah.
But to their great fortune, they have managed to capture a troll.
Okay.
Chris, what do you know about trolls?
Bigger chihuahua.
Yeah, they're a bigger chihuahua. So the most iconic thing about trolls is they have this ability to rapidly regenerate their flesh, unless, of course, they're subject to acid or fire damage.
Yeah.
So imagine, if you will, a tribe of goblins who have captured this creature that can essentially infinitely regenerate itself.
Okay.
What do you think they would do to that creature?
Poke it.
They would, so in my mind, what they would do is infinitely feast on its flesh.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
So imagine a tribe of cannibal isn't the right word because they're not eating goblins.
Yeah, but
imagine a tribe of goblins
that word.
Yeah, so they
works.
have created this infinite food source of troll flesh. Now, imagine the kinds of things that eating troll flesh 24/7. So now you have goblins that have rapidly regenerating flesh.
Yeah.
This feasting on troll flesh has maybe even driven them to greater heights of gorging themselves. Trolls. Another thing about trolls is because of their strange regenerative properties, they're also prone to mutations. So now you got goblins that are growing extra arms. They got huge, giant mouths with many fanged rows of teeth. They're all going crazy. They're all going wild. And now you have a threat that's not just a bunch of 5 health little munchkins that your party's going to roll up on and be like, oh, well, we killed those goblins. Now we killed the next goblins.
Yeah.
Now all the goblins are dead.
This is actually scary.
Yeah, so now you have a threat, and it takes the best of both worlds because if a player knows anything about trolls, they know that they need to bring fire and acid damage. If they see a bunch of goblins regenerating, they're not going to know what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a new situation for your players to discover, like, oh, this is how we deal with these goblins.
These
like
aren't your
acid.
mama's goblins.
And that's a clue for your players, like, oh, wait, why are these goblins behaving in a way that I would associate with trolls? And then they discover, that they have this troll capture, that they're feasting on them. The largest and most mutated goblin would be in charge of everything. So you could crank that thing up to like ogre level threat. And now you have a real scary goblin that's in charge of all these other goblins. And Chris, that is my boss battle for the episode.
Steven, I think that is an amazing first boss battle for our very first episode of Around the Tavern. Can I say that one more time? Our first episode of Around the Tavern.
Our first episode of Around the Tavern.
I was a little nervous when we started recording today, but I'm happy. I love this, and I'm excited to keep doing more episodes. And yeah, is there anything you want to say here to wrap up the very first episode of Around the Tavern?
I want to say that, this was exciting. I know Christopher would probably be the first to say that I don't show any emotion at any point during the day.
Emotion? Steven doesn't know that word.
Beep boop, beep boop. Engaging emotion drives. This was exciting. I think this episode was our first, and they'll only get better from here.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. And you, the viewers, thank you for listening, and thank you for joining us here in our tavern for our very first episode. And we'll catch you next time we open the doors. Thank you all.